Hello, everyone. Thank you all for joining us for our program tonight. How can fiction writers top what happened at the Louvre, where the curators of crime, four authors who write about art, antiques, and antiquities crime, give us their take on this brazen daylight robbery. My name is Caroline Pack, Adult Services Librarian with the Alexandria Library Burke Branch. During this interactive event, you'll meet the authors, Nina Wachsman from New York, Mary Monnin from Missouri, Connie Berry from Ohio, and Lane Stone from here, Alexandria, Virginia. So thank you all for joining us. And I'm going to send this off to Lane Stone to start off the program. Lane.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming. I'm Lane Stone, and I write the art thriller trilogy, The Big Picture. The Collector was book one, and that was followed by The Canvas, and Crimes and Sins will be coming out July 2026. I wrote several cozy mystery series before turning to writing thrillers. I live in Alexandria, Virginia, and Lewis, Delaware, with my husband and two standard schnauzers. As Carolyn said, we four are the curators of crime, and we write about art crime and how the passion for art can lead to murder, obsession, and in October, perhaps to a robbery at one of the great museums in the history of the world. So, how can we fiction writers top what happened at the Louvre? In a murder mystery, the body is lying there. The victim is not going anywhere, at least not without a gurney. Not so when the victim is stolen art. Imagine the artwork getting farther and farther from the investigator and through his or her eyes from you, the reader. Each step the art takes from the museum is a potential plot point for us. One question all of us get is, where do you get your ideas? And this is one way. As an overview, Nina will put the crime in historical perspective to give you the scale. And then Connie will talk about the criminals, actually just those who have been apprehended so far, and the investigation using what the thieves left behind at the scene. Mary will talk about what was behind your, my, and the whole world's captivation with the event. And I'll finish by talking about what happens next. So, just a few housekeeping notes. For tonight's discussion, we'll use the term art crime to refer to antiquities, art, and antiques offenses. Next, please put your questions in either the chat or the Q&A. Third, each of us has an ebook to give away, and at the end of the evening, we'll choose the winners from a random drawing of those who have commented. We also have a little freebie to thank you for coming. And last but not least, tonight's presentation will be in English, not French. So I am going to show you a little video that I think you'll enjoy. And this is from a TV show called Further Investigations, like our 60 Minutes. In the video, two criminals can be seen walking towards the glass case, display case,
Lane,
smashing them. Yeah,
is it just me, but I cannot see your screen?
okay, I'm sorry. Let me start over. Sorry.
Can anybody else see it?
Thank you for telling me that.
Okay.
Yeah, wait a minute.
Ah, there we go.
There.
Yeah.
There we go. All right, let's go. Sorry, guys. Just a second. Let me try again. It's not. Let me try again. Sorry. Because you'll really like the video if I can get it going.
Technology is great when it
Yeah,
works, but
yeah,
when it
really.
doesn't,
Okay, here we
you'll
go.
get it.
There. Can you see it now?
No,
No.
No, you cannot?
no.
Okay, sorry. All right.
Oh,
Yeah.
there
Now?
we go.
Yep.
See the two thieves go in. The personnel was alerted and one grabbed a guidepost. Can you see him down here?
I think it's stuck. It's stalled.
Yeah.
It's not stalled for me.
Oh, you see
Yeah,
that
it's-
as it's
it's
stopped
stalled
for
for
us.
us.
It is okay.
But I think we can see the cases, which is
Yeah,
very
okay.
good. You
Yeah.
can see this whole long gallery.
Can
And we
Which
can
is
see
beautiful.
one of the guys, I think.
Maybe you're gonna
Yeah, we
have
can
to
see the guy.
describe it, Lane.
okay. Now how's that? Is that still
No.
stalled?
Yeah.
No. Yeah.
Okay, so they smash the case with their grinder and then their fist.
Hmm.
And the first thief is pulling out all of the jewelry he can and putting them in his clothes and in his bag. And then he goes to help his accomplice. I really want you to see this. It's such a neat video.
Maybe at the
And-
end, if you we can try
Well,
Try
again.
it again.
if anybody wants to look at that too, or if anybody has seen it, it was on YouTube. So let
in
us know in the chat if you've seen
yeah,
it.
I put the link
Yeah.
for the chat, definitely. They both finally flee, dropping objects on the ground as they go.
Hmm.
And in total, the whole incident took 4 minutes.
Yeah.
So this
Incredible.
is, yeah. Okay, so I'm going to stop my share.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay, now we would like to conduct a poll, but we're going to ask you to answer in the chat. How many of you think this was a commodities crime? And how many of you think that this was an art crime? I'll ask you again near the end of the evening. Now the reason we ask is because one necklace had 1,138 diamonds, two brooches had 2,500 diamonds in them, and a tiara had over 1,000 diamonds and 24 sapphires. Nina now will talk about the crime. She writes the Venice Beauties Mysteries set in 17th century Venice. The first was the Gallery of Beauties, the next was the Courtesan's Secret, and the latest was the Courtesan's Pirate, which was a finalist for the 2025 Anthony. She is a graduate of Parsons School of Design, where she studied illustration under Maurice Sendak, and brings her knowledge of art into most of her books and short stories. She lives in New York City with a husband and absolutely no pets. Nina, how can we fiction writers ever top what happened at the Louvre?
Okay, well, I just wanted to share this picture because when you all see this picture,
Yeah.
so this is the jewels we're talking about. I just want you to see that crown. That crown, I've seen it many times in that gallery. This gallery was one of my favorite galleries to go to, but it's all of these amazing pearls strung together with diamonds. It's absolutely fabulous. And this is Empress Eugenie, who was the last of the Napoleonic dynasty, and she's wearing the crown jewels. And some of the other pieces that were stolen was a emerald necklace. But I think the thing about this crime, so what I was trying to show you, and I'm going to stop sharing for a minute. The thing about this crime is not only, there was passion in this crime because it wasn't just, we were talking about as a commodities crime, but it was also a national treasure that was stolen. And so we got to think about that as well. Now, since I write historicals, my writing process usually begins with research. And in this kind of situation, if I'm writing a heist story, I'm going to do some research on what were some of the best heists and what heists in the past. What can I learn from them? And how can I raise the bar from what's been done before to captivate my audience? So the first thing I did is I looked at, I mean, obviously the heist at the Louvre, I looked at any other heists that were conducted at the Louvre, and we all know that one of the most famous thefts was the first Louvre robbery, which occurred in 1911 and was the theft of the Mona Lisa. And it's what made that painting famous because before that it was pretty much obscure. And that was a former employee of the museum who'd built some cabinetry there, who was Italian. And again, like we talked about that passion for art, his passion was that he felt it was an Italian piece of art and he wanted to repatriate back to Italy. The interesting angles, and as an artist, as a writer, what we look at are what are some of the interesting angles we can see in some of these past crimes that could fuel our own writing, and how would we use what angle would we take if we were going to write about these kind of crimes? So one of the interesting things about that first Louvre robbery was that one of the suspects was Pablo Picasso, who was interviewed. And again, there were some other very famous people who were interviewed as part of that crime. The second one I'm going to talk about, which was something that, since I write about Venice, there was a famous art crime in the city of Venice in the 1990s, and it was the theft of the city's iconic masterpiece. It was kind of like, again, the pride of the city, its mascot. It was a painting called Madonna col Bambino, and it was hanging in the Doge's Palace in Venice, which is like the main tourist site of Venice. And the interesting thing about that theft is when, from the time it was stolen, everybody knew who stole it, that only one man could have done it, which is kind of another interesting angle when you know that who the thief was, and he was known as the gentleman thief. And I think all of us have in the back of our mind, at least I do, is the Thomas Crown affair, when they kind of knew everybody they suspected that he was the one who stole it. And then the other famous crime that one thinks about when you think about these big art crimes is the Isabel Gardner Museum theft in 1990s, and which has become the famous empty frames and had robbed us of some of the greatest masterpieces, old masters from that crime. So the interesting thing when I look at those three crimes, what can we learn from those three crimes and the Louvre crime? So the interesting thing is the planning and the cleverness involved in the current Louvre crime, because obviously to get that planning, to get that cherry picker, which is how they got into that second floor, to look like, to know that if they looked like, workers, they kind of were looking like workers, so nobody paid them any attention, even though it was in broad daylight and there were crowds of tourists all over the place. But in the first theft at the Louvre, that one, even though it was stirred by nationalistic passions, that was not a professional thief. That was a guy who just had this incredible passion for his country and felt that painting belonged in Italy. And what he did is he did it also, like most crimes, after hours, where he hid in a cupboard, and he knew about which he knew because he had done work in the Louvre. And because of the lax security, he was able to grab the painting, the Mona Lisa, and escape with it unseen. But he was not a professional enough to know what to do with it afterwards. So he did want to get it back to Italy, but he had no plans on how to do that. And in fact, he kept it in his room in Paris for 2 years. So if I were writing a story about that, my angle would probably be to make him kind of like the hapless thief, the non-professional, and make it a little bit tongue-in-cheek and maybe a little funny because he turned art criminal because of his passion for art and his passion for his country. And in fact, when he was caught, finally, he was not even given a very bad sentence because he was caught in Italy because they felt he did it for nationalistic reasons. Now I'm going to talk a little bit more about the theft in the Doge's Palace, which is one I did write about in a short story that's going to come out shortly. And that one is very interesting for a couple of reasons. It has some similarities to the Louvre theft in that it was done after hours. It was the original Louvre theft that was done after hours. And like the current Louvre theft, it was done by a professional. But a lot of aspects of that theft is almost stranger than fiction than we could write, that I could write. So in that one, the thief went on a tour of the Doge's palace, like any tourist does. And the Doge's palace is also connected, where the museums and where the paintings are, is connected through the Bridge of Sighs, the famous Bridge of Sighs, to the Doge's prisons. So when you go on the tour, you go through the Doge's palace, you go over the Bridge of Sighs, and you get to tour the prisons. So the thief, who was a citizen of Venice, knew very well that there would be a lot of guards on the Doge's palace side where all the art was, but there were no guards on the prison side because there was nothing there to steal. So all he did was he hid in the cells on the prison side, waited till the museum closed. He knew, he waited till the guards were on the other side, went through the Bridge of Sighs, grabbed the painting, put it under a wrap, and then just walked out right into the crowd, similar to the Louvre, where the thieves walked out into they went by scooter, but they went through the crowds and nobody paid them much mind. Well, here he just walked into the crowd of St. Marco with the painting under his arm, and nobody stopped him. Nobody knew anything about it. And like the current Louvre theft, this thief was a professional. Like I said, he was known as the gentleman thief because he kind of did crimes and he was, almost like a Robin Hood, stealing from rich people, giving it back to the poor, donating it to museums, donating some of the proceeds after the theft. And he sold the painting, he donated to museums and things. And in this case, the reason he stole the painting was not for money. He had stolen the painting for a criminal boss who actually held the painting for ransom to the Carabinieri, the authorities, in order to free his brother from prison. And the thief did not want to take the painting because he knew that everybody would know it was him because he was the only one who would have the audacity to do it. But he was pressured to do so by a crime boss. And then on the other hand, and here's a great angle for a writer, he was also pressured by the authorities that he better bring that painting back because it was the national mask. It was the mascot of the city of Venice. So he's under pressure from both sides, one to steal it and one to return it. And in the end, he was able to, they got the brother out, the painting went back. And what did the thief get all of it out of this whole big this whole big affair? And this is where I said it gets stranger than fiction. What he got was a dedicated parking spot for his boat in front of his apartment. So, so that, that's kind of an interesting story. Now let's go into the Gartner thefts. And that was also similar to the Louvre. The thieves gained entry into after hours, but the way they gained entry is they were dressed as police. And they approached the security guards, and claimed there was a call of a break-in that they were going to investigate. So that uniform, that thing that makes people feel they kind of makes the person the trust. It's a worker. Oh, it's a worker. Oh, it's a cop. Oh, I'll let them in. So they got in, and they say now that perhaps the security guards were complicit in it, but anyway, they got in pretending to be these police, got out of it. They were highly professional, and the stolen items were never, there's no trace of them. And if you go on the Gardner website today, you'll see there's still the listing of the $10 million reward for the recovery or for any information to recover them. So all in all, I have 4 takeaways from these top crimes that I used in my short story, and I would use in anything else I write, based on what I've seen from the Louvre, this current Louvre burglary, and from some of the ones in the past that would help raise the bar for me as a writer. First of all, it must be bold and clever, because only by being bold or clever are you going to gain the admiration of the reader, because you're also stealing a national treasure. So there's some empathy for the fact of the loss of this great painting, but then at the same time, you're getting their admiration because your plan is so audacious and so clever. And the daytime robbery in the Louvre was audacious enough, and the way it was done with the cherry picker was clever enough that it gained our admiration, even though we're all very upset that these wonderful gems have been taken from the Louvre and probably won't be seen again. But it does help us, it does make us usually, and with the gentleman thief who stole the artwork in Venice, I think that the Carabinieri and a lot of the people were rooting for the thief because they the audacity and the cleverness of his crime was also very admired. The second thing that I think we learned from this is you have to have a plan for stolen objects. Now, in this robbery, it seemed though they did. I mean, one of the things the CCTV caught them a couple of hours later in a garage in a suburb, pulling out some of the jewels and admiring them. They did catch
Oh.
two of the thieves, but they were successful in getting away. They did drop one crown as well. And again, we don't know if they're dismantling them, but that we could leave to our imaginations. In the Gartner theft, the paintings were never recovered. So we assume that the thieves had a well-organized plot of how to get rid of them. And as I mentioned in the Venice theft, the thief had a really well-organized, it was very clear what the painting, how the painting was going to get to the boss and how it was going to be returned to the authorities. So that even if there's a big question of what happens to the painting afterwards, to us writers, it gives us an opportunity to solve the crime in a unique way. It's kind of like our own giving the reader in on the secret of what really happened to the paintings in the Gardner theft. I think the other thing that we have to do in these, we all assume that when a painting's in a museum or in these secure settings, that we have to show the part of showing the cleverness is by showing the facade that's the security represented it, because the thieves were able to evade cameras, alarms, guards, and grabbing the jewels. So in a way, the thieves are outsmarting the system. The crime outsmarts the system. And then the last key issue that I think is very, very interesting is that the use of uniforms, both in the Gardner thieves and the fact that these guys in the Louvre thief were mistaken for workers, that invisibility or that free pass of using a uniform is something that we could definitely use as a way to get in and out and way to get our thieves to commit these crimes. So those are the kind of crimes that I looked at. You guys, if anybody wants to put in the chat, if they have any thoughts of some famous crimes that they'd like to mention, please put it in the chat.
That's fascinating, Nina. Thank you so much. Connie Berry will talk about the criminals and the criminal investigation. She's an anglophile and a self-confessed history nerd. She writes the best-selling and multi-award nominated Kate Hamilton mysteries set in the British Isles, featuring an American antiques dealer with a gift for solving crimes. Like her protagonist, Connie was raised in the antiques trade. Her latest, A Grave Deception, came out in early December. She lives in Ohio and northern Wisconsin with her husband and adorable dog, Emmie. And I think we just saw Emmie just a few minutes ago. And we all got some great news this morning when we learned that Connie's Grave Deception was nominated for an Agatha. So yay! Yay. Connie, what surprised you about the crime or about the investigation? And how did these perps, though we call that person the antagonist, get caught? Because we know your protagonists would have outsmarted them.
Well, I certainly hope so, because in this case, it wouldn't make much of a book. Nina talked about cleverness and boldness, but for all their boldness, the main perpetrators of this crime were caught within days, and the rest of them, or most of the rest of them anyway, were caught soon after. I think maybe the total is 9 right now, although I think they're still working on it. But
Five have been charged. 11 were
okay.
questioned, and five were charged. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that. But that's the point, because they say that life is stranger than fiction. But life can also be a lot less interesting than fiction as well, because as a whole, criminals are not the best and the brightest. Now, Nina talked about some of the very, very clever art crimes, but as a whole, who remembers Jay Leno's Stupid Criminals? My husband and I have been watching them kind of as a palate cleanser recently, and my very favorite is a criminal aware that the police were looking for his white Mitsubishi pickup, stole another vehicle. Unfortunately for him, the vehicle he stole was also a white Mitsubishi pickup. So the criminals who stole part of France's history weren't the brightest either. And I'm going to begin with the fact that the Louvre is famous, or actually infamous, for art theft. And I want to thank Lane for pointing me to this. I'm going to try to screen share here. We were talking before we started about how stressed we all are to screen share if it doesn't work out. But uh, okay. Can
Don't
you
make my
see that?
mistake. Be sure to no
Yeah.
hit share. Did you hit share
Yeah. Oh,
first?
I didn't hit share. There
That's
you
what
go. Okay. Share,
learn
share,
from
share.
us.
Okay. So this is a kind of a comic thing. It's called The Daily Scene in the Louvre.
There it is.
It was a 1911 cartoon by Samuel Earhart showing patrons blatantly stealing works from the museum after an inventory at the time found that over 300 canvases were actually missing. So you can just see
Wow.
people stopping and taking them away, and the guards are just kind of looking on. But the victims of theft can be stupid too. And that was the case in this crime because the password for the Louvre security system was Louvre. So, what can authors
Mm.
learn from the most recent Louvre heist? Well, one is, and I'm just going to reiterate what Nina said right now, their boldness and creativity. I mean, the Louvre. I mean, think you're thinking in your mind when you hear about the Louvre, the best security system in the world. It's got to be absolutely wonderful. So the setting was over the top. This is one of the most famous museums in the world,
Yeah.
containing some of the most fabulous artworks in the world, too. And then the jewels, what they stole, the historic jewels of French royalty. And then, of course, the boldness, daylight robbery, the way they got in, how they did it in 4 to 5 minutes, absolutely impressive. So, when authors are thinking about writing art crime, we really do have to think big. So, how interesting would it be, for example, in a novel to have someone steal your grandma's paint by numbers art project? Not that interesting. Or maybe a couple of bricks from the old Roman wall at the Vine Street Museum in London. So we really want to make it interesting. We want to think big. And then Nina also talked about a couple of the motives for art crime. And one of them was the act of patriotism. So money is only one of the motives. Patriotism is another. And actually, Nina mentioned a couple. This idea of stealing something for your country, I use that in my third novel, which is called The Art of Betrayal, which was the theft of an ancient Chinese funereal jar. And it's actually true that the Chinese government has commissioned squads of art thieves who go all over the world to liberate art objects that belong to their history. So the
Interesting.
point is, in fiction, we want to raise the stakes. We want to make it harder, more devastating, bolder, more clever, more shocking. But I think there's something else that authors can learn as well, and that has to do with the investigation because there will be one. And for all this, the brilliance and the boldness of the Louvre heist, the criminals made it way too easy to catch them. First of all, they left their DNA everywhere in a jacket, gloves, a saw that had actual serial numbers on it, a motorcycle helmet, parts of the cherry picker that they used to get up there. The French police from this crime scene processed more than 150 forensic samples,
Wow.
fingerprints, hair, fibers, skin cells. It was absolutely everywhere. And second, their DNA was on the French database because they were known criminals. And by the way, the French DNA database is called the National Automated Genetic Fingerprint File, is the most extensive in the world. They have 4.4 million samples, 4.4 million,
Mm.
and that's opposed to the US. Our database has 2.9 million. And I think one of the reasons it's so successful in France is because if you refuse to give your DNA, you go to prison and you get a $17,000 fine.
Wow.
So the one thing they didn't make easy, and that's absolutely unfortunate, is the location of the jewels. They're still missing. And that is a mystery worthy of fiction. I hope, and everyone is hoping, that the police do recover the items. And we also hope that they haven't destroyed them for good, but that remains to be seen. So I think that the take home for authors is that we can't forget about the forensic investigation. Gone are the days when brilliant sleuths use Edgar Allan Poe's ratiocination to solve crimes, just solving it by thinking logically and putting and making connections and so forth. Now, yes, the police use psychology, they use profiling, sometimes they even resort to psychics to solve crimes, but these days, the vast majority of crimes are solved by forensics. And as authors, we have to take that into account. So, what if the police get it wrong? Why would they get it wrong? Was DNA evidence planted? So, this is something that we have to think through, and this takes an additional level of research. And this is true even if our sleuths are amateurs, because we cannot ignore the police forensic examination. And the very last thing is that we can't make it too easy. And that means investing our bad guys with a bit of intelligence and with a motive that isn't so mundane, like pure money.
Yeah.
And isn't that more interesting anyway?
I'd agree. Oh, Lane, you're muted. You're muted.
Sorry, my two dogs are in here and I was afraid they were going to make some noise, so I muted myself.
But we got
Thank
some
you,
great
Connie.
questions in the chat too
Yeah,
that
they
I think
really
we could.
are. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So we're at about the halfway point. So thank you for being here. I put a link in the chat for you to download some screensavers, and some of them are kind of funny. And if you can't copy it, let one of us or Carolyn know, and we will email the link to you. One of the questions I saw, I'll be covering in my section, but a couple of you have asked about do all museums have poor security? And there is always the tension between the curators wanting to spend money on art and staff and the security people wanting to spend money
I
on
see that.
security. So we'll talk about that. And that's a great question. Now, Mary is going to talk about our captivation with the crime. She writes the Intrepid Traveler Mysteries about an artifact retrieval team. Her debut novel, Death in the Aegean, was an Agatha nominee for Best First Novel, and the other books in her series involve thefts of jewelry with historic significance. Mary is an avocational archaeologist and a U.S. Air Force veteran. Thank you for your service, Mary. She lives in Kansas City, Missouri, with her husband and two Siberian huskies. How do you explain how the whole world was captivated by the Louvre heist?
It seems like from the moment the thieves escape with the jewels that the whole world has been fascinated by this robbery. For example, a New York Times video and a CNN report have both gotten over 1.4 million views. All the major world news services carried the story, and reports from ABC, the Wall Street Journal, the BBC, and France 24 have all gotten hundreds of thousands of views. And that's not even counting social media. Instagram alone has more than 5,000 posts about the Louvre robbery. So chances are you've seen a news report on the robbery or posts about the heist. And yes, people are still talking about it now, 3 months later. Why is that? Partly it's the brazenness of the theft, as Lane, Nina, and Connie have talked about, but I believe a driving factor for the public interest is the items themselves. I'm going to try to share my screen, crossing my fingers. Okay, there's that, and share. There we go. Okay, so there is something inherently attractive about gold and jewels. The stolen pieces, you can't see this, right?
Yeah.
Okay, good. The stolen pieces are all beautiful, wearable, glittering jewels that once belonged to royalty. According to French news BFM, there's a total of 8,482 diamonds, 35 emeralds, 34 sapphires, and 212 pearls in the 8 pieces that are missing. And I can't kid myself, even if those were all loose jewels stolen from a jeweler shop, that would be quite a haul. But set in jewelry, and jewelry that was once owned by royalty, and you add another layer of fascination. The item's historical value adds to their intrinsic value. French President Emmanuel Macron expressed it this way: the theft from the Louvre is an attack on a cultural asset that we value because it's part of our history. He said that modernization of Louvre security will ensure the preservation and protections of what makes up our memory and our culture. And another politician said the theft was a wound to the French soul. So these items might not be from our immediate culture, but historical artifacts, in some sense, belong to all of us as citizens of the world, as part of our shared human history. And when they're stolen, we feel that loss. And whether we ever plan to go to France to see them or not, that opportunity has now been taken away from us. So Interpol recognizes the importance of cultural heritage and has an entire department devoted to it, and their crime department considers it so important that they publish these most wanted works of art posters. So those of you who've read my Intrepid Traveler Mysteries know that with Stephanie Adams and Thomas Burkhart are familiar with Interpol's most wanted works of art posters. So let's take a look at these items up here. The first item is Empress Eugenie's diamond bow brooch. Originally, it was just a bow, and Empress Eugenie had a jeweler add all the embellishments so she could wear it as a stomacher ornament. If you know what those are, the long triangular pieces that were worn between the chest and the stomach. And so that would have been quite elaborate there. Next to that is her pearl and diamond diadem. And Empress Eugenie loved jewelry so much, her patronage helped launch Cartier's career, which I thought that was quite interesting. Her emerald earrings and emerald necklace from I believe it's pronounced parure, which is a set meant to be worn together, belonged to Marie Louise, which was Napoleon I's second wife. And then on the bottom row, we have sapphire earrings, a necklace, and a diadem, all once belonging to the queens of the First Empire, Queen Marie Amélie and Queen Hortense. Now, all these sapphires are Ceylon sapphires, and they're their natural color, not heated like today's modern jewels are heated to bring out a deeper color. These are natural. Now, the last item is the reliquary brooch, and this also belonged to Empress Eugenie, and it has a deeper history than that, which I find really interesting. It contains 2 of the Mazarin diamonds, a set of 18 numbered diamonds that Cardinal Mazarin bequeathed to Louis XIV in 1661. So diamonds 17 and 18 form what look like butterfly wings on that piece. So the 9th item stolen, Empress Eugenie's crown, was dropped as thieves escaped and damaged. Did any of you gasp in dismay when you heard that it was damaged? I know I did, but never fear, the Louvre will restore it. And that piece contains 1,300 diamonds by itself. So as a writer, I hope to captivate you in the same way that the world has been captivated by this crime. Both my first book, Death in the Aegean, and my 4th book, which comes out this year, Death in Luxor, involve museum heists, like the Louvre theft. And each of my Intrepid Traveler mysteries center around the theft of an artifact that, like the items stolen from the Louvre, incorporate these 3 components. Each is beautifully crafted, each is made of a valuable material, and each engages historical interest. So I want to grab you with those enticements. They're the same qualities that attract a thief who might covet a beautiful piece of jewelry or crave an intimate connection with the history of the piece, or might simply want to sell it to the highest bidder. So let me see if I can share my next screen. Let's see. Okay. So here's a fun look at the artifacts. I've used. Please forgive their simplicity. I've used what I can to convey what they look like, but just to give you an idea of what I'm going for as a writer. So in Death of the Aegean, the gold Akrotiri snake goddess statue is stolen. It's attractive due to the intrinsic value of the gold, the craftsmanship of the piece itself, which is an example of Minoan gold work, and its historical context. Akrotiri was a sophisticated Bronze Age city when Santorini was destroyed by a massive volcanic eruption, and that destruction became the inspiration for Plato's Atlantis. In Death on the Grand Canal, my theft target is the Borgia peacock, a Renaissance pendant encrusted with sapphires and emeralds commissioned by Rodrigo Borgia before he became Pope Alexander VI. And it was a time when people liked to advertise their wealth in their jewelry, and the gaudier the better, as you can see from my inspiration pieces, which are also in some of the screensavers that Lane has put in the chat for you to download. In Death in St. George's, the stolen item is an emerald and gold filigree bracelet that was being brought from the New World to Spain, but ended up in Bermuda after the Spanish treasure fleet ship it was on shipwrecked. Old mine emeralds were harder stones than the newer ones that were mined later in South America, and so they are more valuable. So mystery readers are a curious bunch, and I know that many readers enjoy looking up the historical eras and objects that I feature, and that's why I do that. But getting back to the world's fascination with the Louvre heist, I want to share this photo. So fans of mysteries often identify with the detective who solves the case. So it's no surprise that everyone, it seems, was interested in the man in the fedora. So this photo went viral, getting over 5 million hits worldwide as everyone wanted to know more about the detective. But the reality is pretty funny. His name is Pedro Elias Garzon Delvo, and he's 15 years old. And he went to the Louvre with his family, but found that it was closed because of the theft. He dresses that way regularly, inspired by statesmen and fictional detectives. And it was weeks before he admitted it was his picture. He says, "I didn't want to say immediately it was me. With this photo, there's a mystery, so you have to make it last." And I have to agree. I think everybody loves a good mystery. But in my books, the thief is always caught and the jewels returned, because I know readers want a happy ending. But part of our fascination with the Louvre theft is the fear that the jewels will be destroyed, and that they'll be dismantled and the gold melted down. French prosecutor Laura Bissot announced the worth of the stolen items of $102 million in hopes that the robbers would think twice and not break them down, because the thieves would not pocket the full windfall if they had the very bad idea of melting down the jewelry. So I'd like to think this was an art crime, that the thieves were hired by a collector who would take care of the jewels, but I'm afraid it looks like what Lane calls a commodity crime. I hope they'll be found intact, but I have my doubts. So in the meantime, police around the world remain on alert for the missing jewels. So Lane, what do you think we could take away from this?
Well, my part is called The End, and writers in movies and TV type The End when they finish a manuscript, but I don't know if anyone does that anymore. Anyway, the crime isn't the end. For us, it's really the beginning. And we'll end by talking about possible plot ideas based on what might happen after the robbery, in addition to the investigation, the arrests. And three questions occur to me. Will it happen again? Will the loot be recovered intact? And will anything change in museum security? Okay, will it happen again? Kristen Marinella, founder of Art Recovery International and an attorney specializing in art restitution, predicts that there will be more museum heists because of the sky-high price of gold. Just a month earlier, in September, right before this heist, France's National Natural History Museum was broken into and $700,000 worth of gold was stolen. And the thieves used an angle grinder, does that sound familiar? And a blowtorch. To combat this, he calls for what he says we need cultural heritage terrorism laws. because everyday art crime results in fairly light sentences, and this would increase the penalty of these crimes. Now, speaking of everyday art crime, findings from an audit that the Louvre already had underway by the French government were leaked, and they talked about the problem of over-tourism. Remember, we're talking about the most visited museum in the world. Last year, the museum um, tried to combat this by limiting visitors to 30,000 a day. That's still a lot of people. And this month, January, the price to go into the Louvre went up. For non-EU citizens like us, the price was raised to $37 per person. But with that many people going in and seeing the art every day, security equipment and methods become obsolete faster. There's that many people that can find a way around it. Museum director Laurence Descartes had lobbied for a police station inside the museum pretty much from day one when she took the job in 2021. Next, will the jewels be recovered intact? And I think my unofficial thing is about 90% of you thought it was a commodity crime, and about 10% said it was an art crime, and some of you even said it was both. And we'll find out. So if you said commodities crime, as I did, you believe that the point was to break the items down into 5,000 plus saleable parts, mostly diamonds. The diamonds were old European cut, designed to look good in candlelight. But today, most buyers want a modern cut diamond because we have electric lighting, or I hope you do still, considering the storm. So these diamonds may have to be recut. The vintage cuts have seen a little growth in popularity and value lately because of Taylor Swift's ring. But of course, it would be a huge red flag to have that many old European cut diamonds enter the market all at once. So they'll have to be taken to a craftsman in a place like Antwerp, where the craftspeople are, for example.
Mm-hmm.
That tells me that the group doesn't mind playing a long game. And we already knew that because of their level of planning, mostly surveillance. Now, what will stay the same? Even in art, in a museum security, even authors can't change that. And what might be different in the future? Will stay the same. One example is museums will still have to balance beauty and risk, which is difficult when you consider how old some of our most beloved museum buildings are. The Louvre became a museum in 1793. It was a royal residence before that. An old building like that it poses unique security challenges. And while something like original doors are magnificent, they can also leave the museum vulnerable to threats like forced entry. But that won't change. We're in love with these buildings, of course. Something else that will stay the same, museums will always have to balance access with risk. Art, in this case jewels, in a museum is protected differently from other valuables, say money in a bank. For a museum to act as guardians for our collective memory, people have to experience it, and not from too great a distance. Now, a couple of things that might be changing. Philip Yost, the Notre Dame Cathedral restoration chief, was appointed to reorganize the museum. Many experts see this as a sign that people have lost confidence in museum director Laurence Descartes, though she lobbied for money for security upgrades since she arrived. I can see that being part of a plot. Next thing that's going to change is the museums. This time, the museum security became a political football. One party on the right end of the spectrum, the National Rally Party, called it a national humiliation and asked, how far will the decay of the state go? Nothing like a little rancor to get our sleuths giving someone a closer look. Now, the third thing, and I've saved the best for last. Some of the museum's most valuable jewels are now in the Bank of France for safekeeping. They were moved under police escort in a secret transfer on October the 24th. The items are now stored in Souterrain. I can't the bank's ultra security underground vault, located 85 feet below ground in central Paris. The
Wow.
vault is home to 90% of France's gold reserves and to Leonardo da Vinci's notebooks, plus other national treasures. It's guarded by a 20-inch thick 7-ton door and a 35-ton rotating concrete turret designed to resist all forms of forced entry or attack. And if that doesn't give you ideas for a plot, nothing will. So let's look at some of the questions, and then we'll give away the books. Um,
There's two questions in the Q&A.
yeah. Okay. So the first one, and take this anybody. How many publishers did it take for your stories to be accepted?
Mm.
Lots. I remember my agent. He gets a
I
report
had
from your
like
agent.
100 rejections. I'll go. 100
Yeah.
rejections
Yeah.
before
I remember my agent's
acceptance.
emails, we didn't get the answer we wished for on this. So yeah, you gotta have a tough hide. Nina, Connie?
I'm Yeah, I'm a little different. I had 100 versions before I even tried to get it out there. So the first time I really seriously tried, I got a contract, but that was because I've been working on the thing for 10 years because I knew it wasn't ready and I just kept saying to people who might read a little bit, just tell me what's wrong. If I know what's wrong, I'll fix it. And I just kept fixing it and fixing it and fixing it, and of course I then fixed it more, but I didn't risk putting it out there when I wasn't 100% sure that it was the best I could do. Not necessarily ready for publication, but the very best I could do.
I was
Yeah.
similar to Connie, except that the first time I put out some samples to some agents, they wanted a full manuscript, and I only written 8 chapters. Um, so I was a little behind. And then I revised it and revised it and revised it. And then when I sent it out, I got a contract also, but I sent it to a publisher right away. But I think it was also because I went to a lot of conferences. I joined Sisters in Crime.
Yeah.
I was active in a lot of groups and I learned a lot and I got tips from people and how to write the pitch letters and all that kind of stuff. So by the time I sent it out, it was pretty ready to go.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to be in a professional organization, and Sisters in Crime is one that most of us are in. And here's another question. If the jewelry has been broken apart and sold as individual gemstones, is there any way to trace those stones in the future?
Mm.
Are they identifiable in some way? And if you mean the markings that some diamonds have today, it obviously they wouldn't have that because they're historic. Um, I see more questions are popping up here. So if they have already been broken apart and resized and all that, you know, it's going to be tough.
But if
Um,
they left them alone, like you said, the cut was a vintage cut, so that would
mhm.
identify them
Yeah,
Yeah,
right
that would
now.
yeah,
help.
yeah. And sometimes they do it if a known thief is selling something, it's not going to look. Susan says, have editors been helpful with your writing?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. A good editor is, and I mean, I think we've probably with our editors are with our publishers, and we agree with most of the things they say, not all of them, but
But I
Yeah.
think also some of us, I know I have my own developmental editor
yeah,
that I went to, that I have look over my drafts and help direct me before I send it to my editor.
yeah,
So do I. So
yeah,
do I. Well worth paying for.
Yeah.
yeah. If it's somebody that is recommended to you,
Yes,
um,
yes.
yeah. Any books about the persons who received the stolen art, what they felt, their motivation, what they have
Oh.
to do to guard their stolen treasures. And you talk, Helena, who's a friend of mine. Are you talking about this art in particular that are stolen from the Louvre, or or just in general? There's this idea that there are these like super shadowy rich people that are getting this art, and I don't know how often that happens. I think very not.
Well, in the one of the Daniel Silva books, the Gabriella Lone books, one
Oh
of
yeah,
them,
uh-huh.
He
Yeah.
has like an art collector who steals some of the artwork and keeps it in a
Yeah.
special vault, like a Russian oligarch type
Yeah.
that steals it. Yeah.
But in real life, and some of these people that have it, I don't think they're that secret. Like I think what's the prince from Saudi Arabia, BMD or BM what?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I think that's exactly what he does. But
Well,
he's
but
not
it
your
doesn't
listing.
take very many of them to make a dent because there actually are people, and I know this actually from my parents' interaction in the art world. There are collectors that are so obsessive about some certain thing, and
Hmm.
it can be very valuable. It doesn't have to be that valuable, but they don't actually care if anybody ever sees it. They don't
Hmm.
care if anybody knows they have it. They
Hmm.
want to possess it. And
Hmm.
just the mere fact of possessing something and being
Hmm.
able to look at it themselves is what satisfies them. And they're unusual,
Yeah.
and there aren't too many of them, fortunately. But if they are nefarious and willing to do whatever they can to possess what they want,
Hmm.
they could probably find a way to do it.
And I think
And,
for some people it's like a psychosis. And it seems
Yeah,
that people that are interested in rare books, um,
yeah.
they have that little specialty has the highest rate of those people.
Oh,
but they make
Yeah.
a good antagonist or
yeah.
protagonist,
Yeah, yeah,
however you
yeah,
want to spin it, because
yeah.
they're
Villain.
interesting.
So
Their
let's
passion is
give
interesting.
away the books. And
Oh,
um,
There
yeah,
were some
so
other questions that
so
were in
it's
there.
I think in the
6:58
chat,
or
yeah, I
it's two
know.
minutes to the
I was
hour.
thinking we
Yeah.
do the books and then come back to the questions since it's you say
Okay.
6:58 because you're because
Yeah, sorry.
on the East Coast. Okay, I'll just it says Helena says yes, I was interested in the psychological part. Yeah, it's nuts. Okay. So let me um Connie, you're giving away an ebook, Grave Deception. Who is your winner?
My winner is Darla Durrell, and I'm going to put my email into the chat right now, Darla. If you would contact me, I will get this off to you. It's just Connie at connieberry.com.
Okay. Nina, how about you?
Oh, I didn't do my spinner yet. I'm sorry. Come back to me.
Okay. Mary, are you ready?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm giving away a copy of Death in the Aegean. And if my winner has read that, she can contact me and choose a different one of my books. I've got Camille Bianchini, and I will put my email in the chat also, Camille. And please just contact me and we'll arrange to get your ebook to you.
And I'm giving away a copy of The Collector because it's the first book in the series and you really need to read the first book. To Laura Greenfield, who I'm so excited because she's a friend of mine too. So Laura, I have your email address and I will send this to you. Okay. Nina, are you
Yeah,
ready?
yeah. My book that I'm giving away is I'm going to hold it up here if you can see it. No, yeah, The
Yep.
Courtesan's Pirate.
Yeah.
And I'll give it away as an ebook or whatever. And it's P. Loiko I've gotten.
Yeah. Loiko. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So if
Yeah.
you message me and let me know your contact information, I can get it to you.
And you'll enjoy the book. Or as I said, I highly recommend it, the book and the pirate.
Yes.
So, let me see if I have some other. Mark Jones says, what could a thief realistically do with the world famous historically recognized item? Exactly. Hide it or I mean, you hear sometime about these people stealing things that like they're assigned to find something and they go in and steal it. I don't think that's that common. I think what's more common is people breaking into soft targets like houses. Okay. Anybody else want to weigh in on that? What could a thief realistically do with?
One of the one writer told me about a book he was writing about a theft during the Great Exposition of a mural
Mm,
that Monet painted on a
mm,
wall during the Great Exposition. If you remember, there was a fire and everybody had to leave the exhibition.
Yeah.
And when they came back, the mural was gone. Now, my
Yeah.
question is, what did they do? What did somebody do with that mural? I mean, it was
Yeah.
like, I don't know how many feet long, 24 feet long by 10 foot high. What did they do with that? I
Yeah.
mean, where did they stash that?
But people go crazy when they find a Banksy, those
Yeah,
are
that's true.
stolen,
Yeah.
often.
I guess
So,
it would be, if it's a recognizable piece,
mhm.
it would have to be somebody that wanted to keep it for themselves and just
Yeah.
like Connie said, go look at it, in their attic or their secret room and just enjoy it
Yeah.
themselves because you couldn't really sell it unless you had connections to rich
Hmm.
people that wanted to do that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And of course, the big thing today is the repatriation of national
A
treasures and
Hmm.
cultural heritage.
uh,
Yeah.
a cultural thing. There was just a funny thing that I saw. A guy was talking about the British Museum. There isn't really anything British in it, and it was people
Hmm.
collecting, the collectors going out. And he said, "Yeah, I've heard about that, Alibaba and the 40 collectors going around
Hmm.
taking things, but
Yeah.
that is really big. And most of the time, it's nations kind of negotiating, and every year there are items that are repatriated. But as I mentioned, the Chinese government has
Mhm.
actually gone ahead and authorized teams of art thieves to go all over into private collections and to museums to repatriate their artworks. And as far as I know, none of them have been caught. So they're very clever. And a lot of ancient Chinese art has been taken from museums.
From a
So the Chinese
historical,
government, yeah, the Chinese government doesn't admit this, but
right.
No.
Well, if the
this is
But
thieves
something.
have the backing of the Chinese government, they've probably
right.
got
Yes,
the
Yeah.
best tools
yes,
Well,
and
like
the
we
best
said,
intel.
even the
yeah,
guy who stole the painting, the Mona Lisa, he got a very light sentence
Yeah.
because the
Yeah.
government was, he did it for a good cause.
Hmm.
yeah.
And the same thing, the gentleman thief who stole that painting and then stole it back for the city. He didn't get a jail sentence or anything for that.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing from a historical perspective, in the 1700s in England, there was a whole business of thieves who would break into houses, steal portraits, jewelry, and then hold them for ransom so that the owners would have to pay the thieves to get them back. And they knew there was a head of like the thieves union or whatever, and you'd go to them and you'd pay them off and you'd get your stuff back.
Yeah.
I can see holding it for ransom. We do have one more question
Yeah, I
down
see a
here.
couple more. Here's one from it's P. Loig. I don't know if it's, you know, uh, my career was spent working in art museums. I can
Mm.
attest that numerous museums don't have sophisticated anti-theft protocols, usually
Mhm.
due to
That's true.
cost considerations. And yeah, I've had several museum security people, have been very, very generous with their time, and they say that what you see in a museum as far as security in the movies it is overstated, like they don't have the bars coming up or whatever, they don't have that, but what you don't see, what's happening in the security room with the cameras and all of that does not get enough play, and that is very sophisticated, so I hope
Well,
that's
that's
been
good
Although
to
in
know.
helpful.
in the Louvre theft, they said that the window that they broke in through was one that the camera was not pointing. There were
It
no
was,
cameras pointing at it.
yeah,
So
it was
maybe the
pointed the wrong
thieves,
direction. Yeah.
so maybe the thieves knew that, and that's why they aimed for that window
Yeah.
specifically.
Yeah.
Well, and
um
and very often they have someone on the inside who is
Yeah.
actually willing to help them by turning off the
That's,
the
yeah.
cameras or making sure that you know
or
the
just giving
conditions
them
are
the
optimal.
schedule for the guard,
Yes.
Yeah.
they
Mm.
usually have that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Suzanne wants to know, do you ever focus on the damage of the artwork from the theft in your stories? And in The Collector, a group of religious zealots are throwing paint on paintings, and that is destroying the paintings. So yeah, and most security people will tell you we would much rather somebody steal something than destroy it.
Damage it. Yeah.
Yeah, than vandalize it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can see that.
But when they
Yeah.
sometimes they cut it out of the frames, I was
Yeah.
reading, and they damage, and they think some of the Gartner paintings might have been damaged from the way they cut them out of the frames.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
Yeah, because they would have to cut what, at least an inch, whatever's tacked to the frame.
Hmm.
yeah, they didn't
So that would be
gently
cut
remove
away.
it. Yeah, they didn't
Yeah.
gently remove them from the frames.
Yeah.
They cut them
Well,
out.
it becomes portable,
Yeah.
once it's cut out of the frame.
And also if they roll it up, the oldness of the I would think of the paint on it would crack
Yeah, it
too.
would
And
crack.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Like,
I think there's something else in the Q&A. No, that's okay. So I guess I'll just kind of wrap this up by kind of extracting a pledge from all of you. Connie talked a lot about the dumb criminals.
Mhm.
Well, and Nina mentioned the underground parking garage that the jewels were last seen in. Well, that was in the town where they lived, where the four
Mhm.
lived. And three of those parking spots were owned by that fifth person that has been charged. And her boyfriend was one of the four
Mhm.
guys, and his occupation was construction worker and pimp.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so I feel like, oh, you really know
no.
how to pick
Oh,
them,
and they
don't you, girl?
no, but he knew how to get the cherry picker. That was
Yeah,
his
yeah.
his thing. He was construction guy, so he knew exactly how to rent it and where to get it
But
and what.
I feel like, okay, so if any of you ever commit a really large art heist and you're on your getaway and you're going past all of these CCT cameras, don't go to your own house. Don't go home. And so that's what I want you all to promise me is that if you do decide to take up art crime and you're on the run, don't go to your own house, okay?
And
That's
and if you're going to steal a car, don't steal one that's the same car as
exactly.
your car.
All right.
You have
Thanks,
great
everybody.
tips.
This has been fun.
Yeah.
And thank you,
Bye bye.
Carolyn.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Caroline. Bye bye.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone.